And somebody said it the other day that, when two parents get divorced, they've taken their problems and they've dumped them on the kids.
Yeah.
Or like Michael
absolutely.
Reagan used to say, divorce is like a parent or both parents coming in and just smashing stuff all over the floor and telling the kids, pick it up. This is your problem now.
Yeah.
And the parents will walk away as if nothing has happened and make the kids have to deal with it again and again and throughout their lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. So this was one thing that I struggled with. I had a very challenging marriage. And went to innumerable counselors and even lawyers. My husband had kind of a violent temper, and so I at one point went to a lawyer and said, so how do I handle this? What happens if I get divorced? They said, well, here's how it plays out. You'll get this big payout. All your financial worries are going to be taken care of. It's all going to work out. Which was totally irrelevant to me. The one question I had was, how would my kids fare through this experience?
Right.
And the answer is, as our state law has it, that they will still be in custody with my husband for at least 1 out of every 4 weeks in the month. Which is a little bit ironic to me. If I'm leaving him because he's violent, and I'm going to leave my kids there, that's not a solution in my mind.
Yeah.
And so then I would go to counselors and say, okay, help me figure this out. And universally, the answer is, you need to get divorced. That's the answer to this. And I would keep saying, how does this solve my problem? If this guy is too tough for me to handle, I'm going to bail and I'm going to leave my 5-year-old there. And exactly how does this solve my problem? It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't at all.
Yeah.
I still have all the same problems, only now I've introduced these new elements of he has a new household or a new love life that he's creating, which will now compete with my children for his resources, his times. You think he was stressed out before, he's going to be more stressed out. And he's never going to have to face that issue of overcoming his temper.
Yeah.
So in my mind, no-fault divorce absolutely fails women in abusive situations, particularly, and the children in abusive situations.
Right. And the thing about with no-fault divorce, say that there is an abuse situation, that should be, if there is a criminal action being done,
exactly,
that should be prosecuted. And,
exactly.
And these divorce attorneys don't talk about that. They try to make it sound like it's good for you, but then, and again, I'm going to make the assumption that everything you're saying is true. This person is very abusive and stuff like that. And, even in a worst case situation, he should be in jail.
Right.
He should not be allowed to victimize the next person.
Right.
Or, there should be a resume that's saying, I am a wife beater.
Right.
Or the same thing with a woman we'll say, because it happens both ways. Say a woman's, running around. You say, I am a serial cheater. So
Right.
for the next man, so that he knows that, well, maybe she's going to be my wife for right now. She'll be a serial cheater, and then of course she'll file for divorce and take my stuff.
Right.
And no-fault divorce creates many more problems than it supposedly solves. I don't see it solving anything.
Yeah.
And when you start talking about issues of violence or ongoing adultery or something like that, that is a very real fault. You can't, let's not whitewash it.
Right. I don't know if you've read Judith Wallerstein's book on that, but she points out that one of the problems with that is if you can't say that your home was completely dismantled because one of your parents did this tragic thing, it becomes very problematic for a child. How does a child recognize right and wrong then?
Absolutely.
How can a child identify that they want to have fidelity in their life or they don't? How can they say that one is a more valuable path than the other?
Right.
If they can't identify the fact that they were harmed by the breakup of their home.
Right.
So it creates this unsustainable fiction for children that's just that they have to live through and be tortured through, and then not be able to sort through and make sense of
Right.
in their adulthood.
And then we wonder why children are confused,
Yeah.
or why they make some of their choices, when the reality is we've not let them. We've taken away any sense of right and wrong and morality from them, and we've all stuffed it down them and said, you can't even say this is right
Yeah.
and wrong. And you should be able to say this is right and this is wrong.
Not only can you can't say this is right and wrong, but you also can't say you've been hurt by this.
Right.
So the minute that you can't say this hurt, it eliminates the ability to say this is right and wrong.
Yeah.
So then as an adult, how do you grow up with the moral plan of not hurting others?
Yeah.
Well, you're not allowed to grow up with that as a moral plan.
Yeah. It's if I have a pain in my body, I may ignore it for a little while, but if it's still there and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse and worse, eventually you want to have to go to see somebody to diagnose what's going on.
Right.
What's actually
Right.
happening? Is it cancer? Is it just that, the muscle needs to heal? What is it going on here? But you want to know what it is and have a plan.
And you want it to be accurate information.
Absolutely. And you can see on the emotional level, on the moral level, on these other levels, we're telling kids, you don't get that opportunity.
Right.
Or we try to pretend that, if you went to a doctor and the doctor kept on saying, well, here, just take this Motrin for the next 10 days and call me afterwards. And if you still have some pain, I'll give you a refill.
Yeah.
It doesn't deal with the underlying issue.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying with this whole thing with the moral confusion that no-fault divorce introduces to children, to our society as a whole.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So people that might come to you and say, listen, I'm having a terrible marriage right now. I'm thinking about leaving. What do you tell them at this point? If somebody comes to you and says, please tell me, what should I do?
I don't know. For me, the question was always, what problem does this solve? Are we solving a problem here, or are we just complicating a problem?
Right.
And I think the sad thing about divorce is that our culture has been so permeated with the idea that the solution to everything is it's like snake oil that we're selling one size fits all. Divorce will solve all problems. Adultery, so we've got your solution. And abuse, we've got your solution. When it doesn't address any of those problems, it doesn't solve. You may be living in different households. The children are still stretched between the consequences of that, and the problem is still there. It's just adding a new layer of complication.
Yeah.
What do I tell people? I guess I would tell people, solve the problem that
Yeah.
you're working with.
Yeah, there was a guy yesterday, you might know Doug, but he said that, this one boy came to his mother and said, I'm thinking of getting a divorce, and the mother basically said, you go and you buy your wife some flowers, and I don't want to ever hear this from you again. 40 years ago, and they're still married 40 years later.
Right.
And there was a judge in Texas, Supreme Court Justice, I think his name was Justice Hill or Hempstead or something like that, but he said when people know that they cannot divorce by mutual consent or for any frivolous reason, it makes them become good husbands, good wives.
Absolutely.
So necessity forces something. So to ask the question a little bit differently then, do you think our laws should be changed? This whole idea of no-fault divorce, which was actually, it's a relatively new idea. If you look back in history, the Bolsheviks, for example, they introduced it under Vladimir Lenin, unilateral, no-fault, forced divorce. That's basically what we have in the United States of America today. Should that law be repealed?
I absolutely think it should. I don't think it adds any constructive options.
Right.
And this is coming from a person who's lived through divorce. I don't think it adds any constructive options. I think people need to solve the problems that exist And to just throw no-fault divorce on as a blanket solution is completely counterproductive.
Okay. Well, I think that's basically it then. When we're talking about just to follow up with one other thing, the laws. There are a lot of constitutional issues as well with the no-fault divorce laws. I mean, they violate constitutional protections that we were supposed to have all over the place. So I recently asked a judge, I said, are there any constitutional provisions in your court, protections in your court? To which he said yes, to which I therefore said, so how come you didn't give me any? Because no-fault divorce is divorce on demand, divorce without due process, divorce on an allegation, divorce on the wish of one person against another person, the destruction of a family. It's not just between two individuals. It influences children. It influences grandchildren. And I look and I say, you know what? You may think you and your kids are survived, but what about your grandkids? Do you really want to give that to them?
Yeah.
But anyway, I want to thank you for taking the time to share and the idea that you had as far as the book clubs. I don't know if it's going to be revitalized again or not, but thank you for sharing your thoughts, your feelings, and appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.